Hey RMS, it's Principal Jackson, and I'm here to share another Black History fact with you. Today we're going to be talking about Dr. Carter G. Woodson, and he is known as the father of Negro history or the father of Black history. Carter G. Woodson was born in 1875. Now, that was just a mere 10 years after slavery was abolished. So, more than likely, his parents were enslaved because he was born only 10 years after slavery was abolished. So, he worked hard as a child, and because of the demands of the farm that he lived on, he entered high school late and had to make up a lot of time, but he was super smart. Dr. Woodson was super smart, and he finished 4 years of high school in yet less than 2 years. So that's a testimony to how smart he was. In fact, he became only the second African American, and this was in 1912. He became the second African American after W.E.B. Du Bois, another famous black person that we will be talking about, to earn a doctorate at Harvard. So in 1912, he was one of only two African Americans to earn a doctorate from Harvard, which is a huge, historically known school that is called an Ivy League school. So it's like the cream of the crop, so they say. So Woodson believed that young African Americans in the early 20th century were not being taught enough about their own heritage and the achievements of their ancestors. Because remember, Black history didn't start with slavery or being enslaved. He wanted people to know about the accomplishments of African Americans and people of the African diaspora. So, to get his message out, Carter G. Woodson first reached out to his fraternity, which is Omega Psi Phi fraternity, to create Negro History and Literature Week in 1924. Fun fact about Omega Psi Phi fraternity, our own assistant principal, Mr. Purvis, is a member of that same fraternity. So, Dr. Woodson chose February because the month contained the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, and we talked about that earlier, and we talked about how they were two prominent men in the eyes of African American because their historic achievements in African Americans' lives were already being celebrated because their birthdays were in February. But Woodson wanted a wider celebration, and so he decided that his association that he created, which was the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, needed to be dedicated to researching and promoting achievements of Black Americans and other people of African descent. Did you know that Carter G. Woodson wrote over 20 books, journals, and articles in which he and other researchers brought attention to the achievement of Africans and African Americans? So that's very important. He was super smart, just like you, RMS students. So, in the 1960s, with the rise of the civil rights movements and Black Power movements, young African Americans on college campuses, they were becoming increasingly conscious of the historic dimension of their experiences as African Americans. Many of them went to historically Black colleges and universities, which we'll talk about later on this month, of which Principal Jackson and Assistant Principal Purvis, we are graduates of historically Black colleges and universities. So when they were on college campuses, they were becoming increasingly more conscious of their historic dimension and in their experiences, and they pushed for the celebration not only just to be a week known as Negro History Week, but to be celebrated for the entire month of February. So in 1976, on the 50th anniversary of the first Negro History Week, and 100 years after the slavery or enslaved people, the whole institution of slavery was abolished, Negro History Week officially became Black History Month. And that was in 1976. And since then, every U.S. president has issued a proclamation honoring the spirit of Black History Month, starting out with President Gerald Ford. He began the tradition in 1976 when it became nationally known as Black History Month. And so, since 1976, Black History Month has been celebrated and become recognized nationally. And guess what grade Mrs. Jackson was in 1976? I was in second grade. So that just shows you how short of a time period Black History Month has been shown or been celebrated. So history is made every day, and you can be a part of history. So we hope you learned something new today, and make sure to research more about Carter G. Woodson or African American History or Black History Month by going to history.com or contacting our media center and checking out some library books, or going through Macavia, which is also in our library or in our media center, and reading books about African Americans and about Black History Month. Have a good day and continue to learn something new.